All righty, we're in order.
Me speaking and recording going on at the same time is never a good idea. This is the Technical Advisory Committee of SCTA, RCPA 131, and we will get started with introductions. And to save time, I will read through some of the names, but the names I'm not familiar with, if you could jump in and introduce yourself, that would be great. We have Elizabeth Tyree from Sonoma County Parks. From SCTA, we have Drew Nichols, David Reperda, sorry if I am not pronouncing that correctly, Shauna Gauze, Janet Spillman, Tanya, and I think that is it. Suzanne Smith.
Chris Barney is also with us, Mr. Chair.
And Chris Barney. We can't forget Chris. VMT. Nader from the county. Steve Bertelbaum. I always forget what organization Steve is from. Edie Takata from, go ahead, Steve.
Transportation Land Use Coalition.
Thank you. Sorry, Steve. Edie Takata from Roner Park. Oriana Hart from City of Sonoma. It's a new name to me. Welcome.
I am the new project manager for the City of Sonoma, and now replacing Fergie, who is retired.
Excellent. Thank you. Nice to meet you. Mona from the City of Windsor. Rachel from Sonoma, Santa Rosa Transit. Vanessa from Cloverdale. Tony from, I do this every week, don't I, Tony?
Sebastopol.
Sebastopol, thank you. Steve Urbanek from Sonoma County. Ken Eichstad from City of Petaluma. Hunter also with Sonoma County. And Quinn Kelly from Tool Design, here to talk about Vision Zero, I would assume. Nancy Adams from Santa Rosa. Stephen Hunter from Sonoma County, and John Caldwell. If you want to introduce yourself quickly.
Yeah, I'm City of Cotati, sitting in today for our director, Craig Scott.
Thanks, John. Nice to meet you. And if I missed anyone, jump in now. Okay, moving on. Item number 2, a vote to continue these meetings via Zoom. Do you have any kind of presentation, Shauna, or other, or is this just a discussion? Well, I am for it. Do we have anyone who is opposed to continuing these meetings via Zoom? Anyone would like to discuss this? I will take that as a unanimous vote in favor of continuing on Zoom until further notice. Item number 3, public comment. Jump in there, Steve.
Yes, thank you. I noticed that the governor's budget has an extra $500 million for the active transportation program. I realize this is on the agenda, but I would be curious to know how they're going to handle that if we know, and whether that will affect the current cycle, in that we don't get the budget until the middle of the year. The legislature actually has to act on what the governor has suggested. So thank you.
Sure. Shauna, do you want to take that, or you want me to?
I can. My understanding, and we have lots of other people here who can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that there was some additional money that was identified in last year's budget, and then it got tied up in a argument over high-speed rail. And so it was continued into this year's budget as well. The intent is to augment the existing cycle of ATP, which had so many really good applications, but not nearly enough funding, that they meant to supplement this ATP cycle. And so we will have to wait until it is approved in the budget, but that is the intention. David, if you have something to add, please do.
Through the chair, just to add on to what Shauna has said, really it depends on the timing of the legislature and whether they make a deal with the governor to add this money. So it could either be an augmentation to the existing cycle 6, or it could be a future cycle. We're just not sure yet.
Yeah, that's what I've been hearing as well. And just to correct what David said, I think the existing cycle 5 or adding it to the cycle 6 call for projects.
Right.
So did that answer your question, Steve?
Yes, thank you. I don't know what to look for.
Yeah, it's projects already in the ATP, either existing projects applied for, or most likely those same projects will be reapplied for in cycle 6. So that's your list of projects. And one in particular is in the city of Healdsburg. So I'm anxious to hear it as you are.
I'm glad to hear that everybody's on top of this. Thanks.
Seeing no other public comments, we will move on to the approval of meeting minutes. Does anyone have any comments, corrections, additions? Seeing none, I would be looking for a motion to approve the minutes of December 2nd, 2021.
Move to approve, sorry.
Second, approval.
Excellent. Thank you, Stephen Ken. That is approved, and seeing no objections unanimously. Moving on to item number 5, SB 743 update VMT. Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. So happy to provide a brief update on SB 743 and VMT implementation this afternoon. So the first item I want to let everyone know about is progress on the VMT reduction calculator project. So we've been working on back-end data collection and development for that. So Fair and Peers has been busy. I've been busy on that. And then we have our first steering committee meeting next Tuesday at 3 o'clock. So the topics on the agenda for that meeting are to dig into VMT mitigation and quantifiable mitigation specifically, and what's most appropriate for Sonoma County, and what would be most useful to include in the tool for local implementation, and to also look at a first draft of place types for Sonoma County. So certain types of implementation will be more or less effective for different development types in different locations in the county. So Fair and Peers is working on that, and so we'll be able to look at a draft map next Tuesday afternoon. So the next update is an update to the VMT summaries that we extract from the travel model. So I've included a key and a updated table on, it looks like, pages 6 through 8 of the agenda packet. So you've seen a few previous versions of this table already. It goes through and provides a number of different VMT estimates by jurisdiction and for the entire county, and also some VMT efficiency metrics that are used for VMT implementation. So just to go through some of the major changes to this version, the largest of which is we've updated the model base year to 2019. That includes land use updates and some validation work looking at 2019 travel conditions. So that has shifted the numbers slightly. We've also updated and improved the population and employment numbers. So previous versions of the model actually used a countywide persons per household rate and used that to estimate population and used square foot per employee rates. So we've updated those to be more jurisdictional specific and have used recent census data and state employment data to true those numbers up. And just one thing to keep in mind when you're looking at the VMT estimates and also the population employment estimates, those are summarized at the sphere of influence level. And we do that to so the numbers don't jump around going forward, and it accounts for future annexation. So if your population or employment number looks a little high, it's because it's including that sphere of influence in that number. Another thing we've included this time around are regional averages from the MTC travel demand model. Just so a few notes on that. In some cases, folks are looking for the MPO regional average for certain VMT metrics. So we've included those. MTC has compiled some of those numbers, and so we've included those for reference. I would note that the residential VMT per capita number looks pretty close to ours. I trust that number, but the employment VMT per worker number is quite high. And so, I've dug into this with our modeling consultants and VMT consultants, fair and peers, and talked a little bit with MTC about this. And we're pretty sure that the calculation methodology is quite different that they're using here. So we're digging into that with MTC. And expect to have more information about that in coming months. So one other thing I did want to let you know about is a lot of this VMT information is quite technical, and there's a lot of involved and a lot of formulas. And so I'm working with fair and peers on putting together a technical memorandum, just going through how VMT is calculated using our model, what the formulas are, and also providing some information on regional averages. So what averages are available and what you may choose to use, or your consultants may use when you're doing different calculations. And along with that, we're going through and updating our website right now. And at some point, we'll have an SB 743 landing page on our website where we can put these summaries, have links to the screening maps, eventually have a link to the VMT mitigation calculator there. So, a lot of this information is already available in past agendas, but it may be hard to find. So we want to have that in an easy to access spot on our website. So that'll be coming sometime later this year. So with that, happy to take any comments or answer any questions.
I see Nancy has her hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Chris. As always, you guys are doing a great job. So on the revised figures for the cities and whatnot, refresh me on what the residential per capita and then the employment were prior to the 16.6 and 12.39. I'm just curious, did they go up, down? I think they went up, but I don't remember.
They went up slightly. I'm looking at an older version. The old version for residential VMT per capita at the county level was about 16.5. So it's gone up a little bit. The employment VMT per worker's gone down slightly from about 12.5 to 12.39. So they're still in the same ballpark. So the main differences are just, the 2019 base year, and then the employment and population shifting around a little bit by using the new formulas. So they should be relatively close in most cases. But yeah, if you have any specific questions, please reach out and I'm happy to dig into the calculations with you on that.
Yeah, and Chair, if I could ask one other question on the calculator. So is this, I just printed the agenda out and it just goes through and lists the variety of strategies like that I guess we're going to think about in terms of, how they could help offset VMT. So is it the goal to like, if you put in a mile of bike lane, that's worth so much? Is that what we're trying to get to?
That's
So
exactly
just
it.
kind of, okay.
Yeah. And, one thing that Fair and Peers is really quick to always remind me, and I'm sure they'll remind everyone else about is, when calculating these mitigations, there needs to be backup for that. So sufficient evidence, since it's part of the CEQA process, you want to make sure that there's some data and research associated with that. So I'm sure that'll be part of the discussion on Tuesday, and there'll be an opportunity to include, mitigations in the tool or as part of the documentation that may not have as much documentation, but there'll be an asterisk attached to that that basically just says, the research and backup is less solid for this, so use at your own own risk. So, but yeah, looking forward to that discussion on Tuesday afternoon.
Thanks, Chris.
Are there any other questions for Chris? Seeing none, thank you, Chris. Moving on to item 6, local road safety plan and Vision Zero discussion. Is there a staff lead on that? Janet.
Thanks, Larry. You all have been hearing about the Vision Zero project now, probably actually for a couple of years. And many of you are on the Vision Zero Action Committee, and I thank you for your service there. It's been a long haul. We're coming up to the end of the project, and the draft Vision Zero Action Plan has been released and is available on our website. Our website is going through some changes now, but you can still find it there. I will put the link in the chat directly there, so you don't have to try to find it on our website. And Quinn Kelly of Tool Design is here today to talk to you a little bit about impacts that you all might feel in public works. Want to make you aware and up to date on this if you aren't already. And we'd like to ask for you to contact us after the meeting if you'd like. Talk to Quinn, schedule a one-on-one interview. We very much want your input on this. The draft is going to the board of, the SCTA board, February 14th. The final will be there March 14th. We're also hoping that all of the communities, all the cities in the county can take it to their respective governing boards. We'll provide sample resolutions as well. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Quinn for some content on Vision Zero.
Thanks, Janet. Yeah, I'll just run through a quick little slideshow. So yeah, my name is Quinn. I am a project planner here at Tool Design Group. Just starting at the beginning, why Vision Zero? Obviously, every year people in Sonoma County lose family, friends, and neighbors to preventable crashes on our road. This map you see here shows the location of every fatal crash in 2020 by travel mode. So Vision Zero starts with the belief that no loss of life on Sonoma County roads is acceptable. It's a bit of a transition from what I'd call like the traditional approach to traffic safety. So it sort of starts with the idea that severe and fatal crashes are not something that we should accept as inevitable, nor do they affect all communities equally. Vision Zero recognizes that human drivers are imperfect and we have to plan for that. It focuses on fatal and severe crashes, the ones that tear people's lives apart. Obviously property damage crashes are bad, but Vision Zero is really focused on the ones that have really the hardest impacts on people. So, and Vision Zero emphasizes a collective responsibility through a safe systems approach. And to speak to, Vision Zero obviously complements a lot of related efforts around mobility justice, environmental justice, economic development, and greenhouse gas reduction. So we started this process by looking at the crash data in Sonoma County. And so these are the top 4 crash factors, whether we look at all crashes or fatal and severe injury crashes. So impaired driving, unsafe turns, unsafe speed, and right-of-way violations. Vision Zero uses this data to identify appropriate countermeasures, whether that's traffic calming, signal modifications, or drunk driving prevention programs. And it takes a public health approach that seeks to address the root causes of traffic deaths and injuries rather than just treating the symptoms. So some of you may have seen this map already. This is the Sonoma County High Injury Network. So this was developed through a systemic safety analysis that looks at the location, frequency, severity, and mode of crashes along the road network, and then identifies areas where users are at higher risk. So this data can be used to identify areas where safety investments should be prioritized. We also lean heavily on some really great outreach work that was done in September and November. There's an online public survey that collected nearly 2,500 responses from community members about traffic safety. As you can see, when asked about the most important safety issues facing Sonoma County, the top 3 responses were poorly maintained roads, bike lanes, and sidewalks, speeding, and distracted driving. So we've really tried to, include specific goals and actions that are designed to address some of these issues that people have brought up. So yeah, consistent with Vision Zero principles, this plan delves into the equity implications of traffic deaths and severe injuries. We look at inequitable access to transportation. Whoa, sorry about that. Inequitable access to transportation and housing that result in disparities in crash victims across race, socioeconomic status, travel mode, and geography. We also look at how different communities are affected unequally by traffic enforcement. And so this plan uses spatial analysis to show the correlation between Sonoma County's most dangerous roadways and its most underserved communities, and identifies strategies to address those disparities. So with that, I'm going to get into the goals and actions. So based on what we heard from the public and key stakeholders and what we've seen in the crash data, we're proposing a prioritized set of actions across 6 major goals. For the purposes of this meeting, I'm going to focus on 3 of those 6 goals: create safer speeds, building safe streets for all, and improving data for effective decision making. So creating safe speeds is a key element of any Vision Zero effort. I'm sure you all, as I'm sure you know, higher speeds increase both the risk of a crash and the likelihood that a crash will result in severe injury or death. Over the past years, speeding drivers caused 4,000 crashes, leading to over 200 injuries and 29 deaths in Sonoma County. And it's important to note that, high-speed roads, regardless of whether the driver is traveling above the speed limit, are a risk factor throughout Sonoma County. Travel speeds of 40 to 45 miles an hour see a notably elevated rate of fatal and severe injury crashes relative to lower speeds. So our 2 key actions in this area are really about reviewing speed limits, setting appropriate limits, and implementing speed mitigation measures. And those can include all sorts of traffic calming measures, narrower lane width, speed humps, speed feedback signs. We definitely acknowledge that any changes to speed limits need to be accompanied by traffic calming and other design changes that will lower the travel speed, or the design speed rather. The next action is about developing and adopting a process to reduce road limits to speed limits to 25 or below on county and local roads where appropriate. This obviously is dependent on the new AB 43 resolution, which is going into effect in 2024. But we want to get people thinking about how this is going to affect local speed limit setting and how we can prepare for that. The next big area that obviously affects all of you is about building and maintaining safe streets for all. So as you saw in the survey data, this was, oh no, I didn't present this survey data, but this was identified in the survey as the most important step by 67% of respondents. So these are some of the key actions. There's actually 12 actions under this goal, the most of any. So I've just included a sampling here. But yeah, updating street design standards, establishing a rapid response team to evaluate and address fatal and severe injury crash sites. We propose that team can also help to propose and implement quick build interventions to address safety issues at those locations. Closing gaps in the bike and ped network, and designing for all ages and all abilities. Completing local road safety plans. Obviously, a lot of jurisdictions are already at various steps along this process, but we want to emphasize that preparing a local road safety plan is one of the best places that local jurisdictions can start in approaching this Vision Zero work, especially from a design and engineering perspective. Local road safety plans often include the sort of systemic safety analysis that we were talking about, but on a more micro level at the local jurisdiction scale. So you can look at roadway characteristics, built environment characteristics that are correlated with high crash locations and use that information to identify dangerous locations, even if there isn't crash data at that location. Some other actions are around improving routine maintenance, especially for bike and ped facilities, especially along the high injury network. And again, identifying opportunities for low-cost, quick-build projects to rapidly implement bike and ped safety improvements along the high injury network. The last big goal I'll talk about today is improving data for effective decision-making, which, Sonoma County has taken a big step in this direction with the Vision Zero data dashboard. And we're just seeking to sort of identify ways to further enrich that data and to get it into the hands of decision makers. So some of the actions we have under here, looking into citation data at infractions that potentially lead to severe injuries and deaths. Looking at data from hospitals and trauma centers to learn more about how and why crashes are happening, and helping to train law enforcement to produce more detailed and informative crash reports, particularly for crashes involving bicycles and pedestrians. So what's next? The action plan really represents a commitment to initial set of actions across Sonoma County's highest priority traffic safety issues. For individuals, we have developed a Vision Zero pledge, which I'll share on the next slide. And as Janet mentioned, for local jurisdictions, we've included a sample resolution to help guide local action committing to this work. And this resolution also includes sort of a menu of actions specifically catered to the local jurisdictions. So folks can sort of choose which would be most impactful and feasible based on local context. And then, yeah, in terms of tracking, we're planning to lean heavily on the existing Vision Zero website and the data dashboard, and then also have a report card tool for the local jurisdictions so they can track their progress, and then SCTA can aggregate that on the county-wide level. So here's the Vision Zero pledge that I talked about. I would welcome you all to visit this website and take the pledge. And with that, I'd like to open it up for questions and comments.
Sorry, I was muted. I said, would the young lady from Sebastopol care to make a comment?
Yes, thank you. I noticed on that, I think you called it the high injury network map, the one with the purple zones and everything. For Sebastopol, obviously, the bulk of the city, their major issues are with the two highways that run right through town. And I guess you don't include the state highway in your map for crash information, or is that something that could be added?
That's a good question. I was not directly involved in the development of the high injury network, but my impression, oh yeah, so it looks like, yeah, it focuses on the local and the county roads.
It's all local roads, but I mean, I recognize that, you don't have control over Caltrans, but is there any way to include at least that information on the map to support the city's ongoing discussions with Caltrans to help improve their highways through the city?
Yeah, that's a great question. We could definitely look into that. I would also say that you can get into some of that data using the data dashboard that's available through SCTA. You can really zoom in and look at crash data on a more granular level for any given location.
Yeah, I guess that's more of a comment that we could add to the draft. It'd just be nice to have something that if it's published that we could point to Caltrans and say, hey, and these are all the mitigations that the region is supporting, and why can't you do those?
That's a great idea. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
I just put a link to the dashboard in the chat.
Nancy.
Thank you, Quinn. I've been following this project, and I just have an observation. just that I wanted to share with the technical staff here on the call. You know, and Quinn did mention the local road safety plans, but you know, I think all of us as jurisdictions have really done, you know, a good job of really trying to address this, you know, just with the engineering and practices that, you know, the traffic calming, or whether we're applying for HSIP funds or safe routes to school. So I think that, you know, that needs to somehow, you know, make sure that is mentioned, because you know, what I don't want is this plan to come out there and not really flag that as something that we're not doing. So that's just an observation. And I kind of relate that to when you show the reasons for the crashes. They were all pretty much driver behavior. So, you know, you kind of marry those two together, and it, you know, so there's a part of me that feels like a lot of behavioral focus is an important element of this effort. So those are just a couple of general broad observations. And then I have a question. Maybe this is to Janet. So you did mention the resolution, and I wondered when those template resolutions would be available for us as cities and the county. So just a question maybe to Janet.
Well, I can share actually. Yeah. So that resolution is going to be part of the next draft plan that's coming out on February 7th. And that plan will also include a lot of the comments that you've made, Nancy, about acknowledging the local action that's been taken. I did want to quickly respond to your point about, you know, driver behavior, which is, I think you're right. I mean, it's all driver behavior, but you can't really separate that from street design. I mean, street design has such a strong influence on driver behavior that they're sort of not really two separate things, but rather, you know, street design is one of many influences on driver behavior, in addition to education and social norms and all of that. So yeah, but point well taken.
I'd also like to commend Nancy on her hanging in there on the Vision Zero Action Committee, Advisory Committee from the very beginning. We appreciate your comments over the last couple of years.
Thanks, Janet. I'm just, you know, I think this is a great effort, and I really, you know, think that there's a lot of value that we'll get as a county and individual jurisdictions once we move past the finish line. So thanks for you picking it up. I know there's been a lot of transition with this project. So.
All right, Ken.
Yeah, thank you, Larry. And thanks, Quinn and Janet, for your work. I'm looking at the dashboard. So we're about the last data that was input was in December 2020. Is it going to be updated? And, you know, how often is it going to be updated with current crash data? Thanks.
Can field that if you want, Quinn.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, Ken, we're actually planning on updating that every year. So the data that we import into the data dashboard comes through the SIM or the TIMS Center down at Cal Berkeley. So I'd expect to see the 2021 data show up there probably later this spring, early summer. So as soon as that's available, we'll go ahead and import that in. So we'll have 2021 data. Unfortunately, it takes a little while for the data to trickle down from the state and be processed by the folks over there. So we're always looking at about a year lag time in the dashboard.
I have a couple of comments and a question as well. I sat in on the public meeting, Quinn. You did a great job under not so ideal circumstances. And I was again reminded of the fallacy of the statement, there's no such thing as a stupid question. I wasn't able to make it completely through the end, but I saw most of it. The kind of backing up what Nancy said, you know, within Sonoma County, the engineers here do much of what was included. And so it's still really good information and good to get out there to the public. But one of the things that I thought was really useful was that comment about getting the police reports to match more of what the traffic engineers need to see. So my question is what's the next step in that? Is anyone leading that charge? Okay, I think I got my answer.
We have some representatives from public safety on the action advisory committee. And we are continuing to try to work with them, and towards the end of the project, we will ask also, our elected officials to engage with this with their public safety departments.
Because I think that would be really beneficial. There's really often we look at those police reports and it doesn't give us enough information to try to solve whatever problem there is.
Yeah.
With that, any other questions or comments for Quinn?
Once again, I'd encourage anybody who wants some one-on-one time with any of us to please contact myself or Quinn directly.
I see a hand up from Steve.
Yes, I would just like to add a comment regarding the police reports. We did discuss this at some length during the development of this, and it's really hard to get officers who are really busy to get into the details. So I think that's something that needs to be audited. Like if you take every 10th report and really dig into it and see whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. And if the police departments know that that's going to happen, I think we'll see an improvement over time. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Steve. All right, if nothing else. Yep,
One last question,
Steve.
Larry. Sorry, I didn't raise my hand.
No problem.
Hey, just a kind of a proof in the pudding kind of question here that, these are policies we're trying to develop here, but, at the bottom of all those things, is there going to be funding for agencies to implement some of the projects that may minimize fatalities and or accidents in these locations that are identified in the plan? I know that's something that's
well, I mean, I'll just say, from my perspective, I mean, part of the goal of this plan is, really coming together around this vision that could potentially enable the county and local jurisdictions to get more grant funding that could help fund some of these type of projects. I think that's definitely a big part of the reason to create these kind of plans. In addition to all coming together around a common vision, is also being able to share that vision with folks who can fund those sorts of things. So.
Well, the SCTA is the funder for us, so that's kind of the basis of my question.
So of course there's HSIP, which is already obviously based in safety, but there is a new focus in the next round of One Bay Area grant, cycle 3, that is on safety and also equity, but they are pushing a safety focus in this next cycle. So, because our 2021 funding program came out a little bit early, we've already asked for the jurisdiction's highest priorities, but one presumes that after this process is done and we identify those things that rise to the top that need to be addressed, that we would see those translate into jurisdictions' priorities that would then get funded through these types of programs.
I'm just, I guess, Shauna, and probably for everybody here, I'm wondering if there's some criteria in these funding programs that gets enhanced from a safety perspective, right? If you're, I guess it kind of harkened back to the old HES system where you were looking at the fatality reduction calculations and all that kind of good stuff for eligibility and, I guess, priority.
So there's a further discussion on the 2021 funding program and how we will be developing our evaluation. So we can talk about this a little bit later as well, if you like, in more detail, because we'll be talking about that specifically.
Thanks.
All right, anyone else? Feel free to jump in. All right.
I should note that there is some funding, the new bipartisan infrastructure law for Vision Zero type projects. We can provide some information about that. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, moving on to item 7. Actually, let's make that 7.1, 7.2, and 7.3, Shauna.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the first one, I'm gonna share screen. And then move to our first item. Okay, come on, go. All right, I'll just scroll. Should have gone, but we'll play it this way instead.
It looks like page 9 of 108.
Yep, I think that's right there, which is something that you should all be familiar with, which is the invoicing and appropriation status form. This, as you know, we talk about this every month. If it's approaching 6 months, it's shown in yellow. If it's past 6 months, it's shown in red. And those are for those items that are we as SCTA are anticipating invoicing on an open appropriation. We also show projects that were programmed in a given fiscal year that have or have not appropriated funds yet. So that's what's shown here. If you have any questions, please feel free to bring them up now. Hearing none, seeing none, I'm going to move on. Okay. The next item, 7.2, is a reminder that we are at the point of the year where we ask jurisdictions to report out on their maintenance of effort for Measure M. You will recall, or you may recall, that last year we implemented a new policy. We had revised policy 4.14 of the strategic plan that talks about maintenance of effort. We had one method, we transitioned to another method. So now we are using the same method that they use for SB1. So we are asking you to report out on what you reported to the state by December 1st of last year. So we just need you. So on this page, you can see that there are 2 jurisdictions that didn't match the state controller's office data that it was reported. So it presumes that there was an audit of some kind that changed your numbers. So if you would report out on those 2 items that don't match, and then you may have seen in your email the form that I sent out earlier this morning, just before lunch really, that is the Word format of this form that is the reporting form. It's a you would only need to report out on 1920 if your audited numbers had changed. So this really only applies, this column really only applies to 2 jurisdictions. And then you will report out here on what you reported to the state controller's office. That's it for that item, unless anybody has any questions. You are requested to submit those by February 15th so that we can summarize that information and get it to the board as soon as possible after that.
Not seeing any comments.
Great, thank you. Then I will move on, Mr. Chair. The next item is the annual Local Streets Rehabilitation Program allocation and local bus transit percentage share estimates for 22-23. SCTA is required to provide these to you by February 1st of each year. We are providing these. Nancy, I did receive your email. It was in fact a typo. I have corrected it. We will resend these. But this is something that we provide to you every year so that you can do your budgeting process. Please let me know if you have questions. Nancy, go ahead.
Yeah, so just on page 16 of the PDF, so they show Santa Rosa's road miles as 51, and it's not Yeah, so I'm looking at,
Yeah.
check with our lab. So that's the adjustment you're gonna make, Shauna. I just want to make sure you're.
Yes, that's
that we're
accurate.
both-
Yes, I got your
Okay.
email. It is a typo. I missed a 0. The Santa Rosa Measure M annual reporting letter said that your road miles was 510.76. So I just missed a 0 there. And we will revise
Okay.
this and send it out this afternoon.
Okay, thank you, Shauna, for that. I appreciate that.
Sure. So does anybody else have questions about the estimates or what it means?
Maybe, on, wait a second. Nope, never mind, figured it out.
Okay. All right, then I'm gonna scooch back to the agenda here real quick, make sure I've got the right item. So we just did that. So
On the 8.1,
yep, so we would move on to item 8.1, which is the inactive obligation, federal inactive obligations report. We do this every month too. We're gonna put the screws to Sonoma County again, and Cloverdale and Sonoma and Windsor.
Sonoma County first, right?
Yeah, you go first, Nader.
Okay, the 32 LO 576 is no longer a project. It has been canceled, and I have the confirmation. I'll send it and share it with you.
Great.
Email. I don't know why Caltrans keeps things. The right hand doesn't talk to the left hand at their end. 138, there is no funds available, obligated that we can charge against. The same thing is applicable to 144, no funds available to charge against. 164, Regional Park. Ken Tam has been working on an invoice, but the challenge is the PED. Caltrans has yet to process his application that he submitted back either late August or early September.
So if the PED is passed and he tried to submit an invoice, then they're not going to process it?
My understanding, Ken doesn't process it, but my understanding that the PID, as long as it's a progress payment, they should process it, whether the PED is valid or not, as long as the invoicing period is within the valid, which used to be an existing PED, nothing beyond the PED.
Right, agreed.
So,
but they still haven't processed that, is what you're saying.
The issue of the PED is Ken submitted it, Ken Tam, Regional Park submitted it to Ken Wen and carbon copy Jose, and they said, no, it has to go to Jose directly, which I don't understand. My ear and my ear, or this is my ear, whatever it is. That's
it's true, and I say it every month. Send it to Jose. Make sure you send it to Jose. It doesn't count if it doesn't go through Jose. Make sure you send everything that goes to local assistance to Jose so he can log it in and then send it to Ken.
Exactly, and I repeatedly remind the staff that if Jose doesn't receive it, it doesn't go into the record. So you never submitted it. If you never submitted it, that's it. So that's the issue, and I'll be working with Ken. Hopefully, we'll get it pushed to be done. Now for 147 and 148, PRMD staff, this is PRMD projects. PRMD staff are working on an invoice for each one of them. Then shortly after, by April of this year, we should be submitting the final report to close both projects out. And 151, there are some comments received, and I will be working with the Department of Health Safety to address those comments and resubmit the final report and invoice, hopefully to close out this project.
Yeah, because that's been languishing for like a couple years. That one needs to get off the list.
Yes, yes. And it's been a challenge for
Yeah.
everybody on this one. The last
It
one,
happens.
yes, the last one is the 32L0LO503. An invoice was submitted earlier this year, the first week of January. Has been signed off by District 4. It is under review at Caltrans headquarters. So finally, we resolved the issues that they had on it. So I'm very happy to have 8 of them instead of 12 or 14. Very happy. That's a
Yes,
good
indeed.
accomplishment.
Well done.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to Windsor.
We're all good. Ken had sent it up in December and it went to the SCO office in January 7th. So it really shouldn't be, I mean, we're going to be paid. So
Great.
I'm not sure why it's still on the list.
This was an older list. When I got on to print it out, it hadn't been updated in a while, so it's possible that it just hadn't been processed yet.
Okay, but we're good.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
All right, let's move on to Cloverdale.
Okay, so Cloverdale, this has been an ongoing issue. It sounds very similar to one of Sonoma County's project. We're just not able to get anything past Ken. And so I'd like to, tell me about this Jose, please.
Jose Reyes at dot.ca.gov.
REYES or Z?
Yes, S. He is the one at Local Assistance who is in charge of logging in all submittals to the Local Assistance District Office. So you send things to him and he logs it in. Now, my understanding was that there was I think similar to the Sonoma County project, there was a project end date. And I think were there expenditures that were after that, or?
There were expenditures after that. And
Okay.
So I think, it's likely that the city will move forward with the revised invoice. It sounds, kind of the paper trail that I'm dealing with. It sounds like Caltrans advised the city to resubmit an invoice, kind of creating this problem. Anyways, I just need to coordinate with the finance officer to see what we need to do to get this off the list. But yeah, I'll kind of start with Jose, see if we can get Ken on board, and we'll see what we can do to get off this list.
Okay. I would recommend, if you're not already on the mailing list, Vanessa, to get on the mailing list for the LTAP, which is the Local Technical Assistance Program. They have a lot of trainings and a lot of resources that can be available that can help you navigate this process. So if you're not getting those updates and those announcements about the trainings that are available, I would highly recommend that you seek that out.
Thank you.
Sure. Nader.
One comment. They used to have a lady, her name was Jasmine, dealing with the invoicing. She left. Make sure you send it to Jose. He's the one who's guarding those until they bring a replacement for her.
Oh, that could be the issue. The most recent email I've got is to Jasmine.
Yeah, just be careful. If you send to Jasmine, it's going to go into their inbox somewhere in the cloud.
Jose, it
Make sure
is.
you send it to Jose.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
And carbon copy Ken on all your communication to Jose. So he
Understood.
cannot say, I didn't know anything.
Okay, I see questions, but I want to go to Sonoma first and talk about that, and then we can come back to questions if you don't mind. So Oriana, I'm going to put you on the spot.
We'll be brief. There's no funds obligated to bill against for construction for Chase Bridge. We did try to put in a very small invoice against the engineering portion in December, and Ken kicked it back and said that we couldn't do that because that phase is closed out. So we're sort of in a holding pattern.
Okay, so you are waiting for new bridge money, and you've submitted everything that you could possibly submit for expenditures under the previous authorization.
Yes, ma'am.
Got
And we understand there should be money maybe next summer.
maybe. Let's hope. All right, now I see questions, so I'm going to go to Nancy first and then Mona.
It's not really a question. It's more of a suggestion. And I don't want to get into, you know, over or attacking Ken or Caltrans, but maybe it's a good idea to periodically invite them to this meeting and not just to, like, you know, beat up on them, but just to have them be part of the conversation, Shauna. And I don't know, now that we're Zooming, maybe that is a good thing so he could hear some of the concerns or whatever. But it's just, I don't know. I feel like these conversations occur monthly, but you know, there's a party that's not present during these conversations. And I don't, like I said, I don't want it to be a bashing of Caltrans. I want to make this a positive thing. So just think about that, you know, and they don't have to come to every meeting, but there might be some value in that. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Mona?
I was just gonna say, for me, you know, I don't get email responses, and really what works the best is you have to call Ken like every day until he responds and then talk it over on the phone. And that seems to be the only way I can get something, because I think he gets overwhelmed. There must be just so many emails that it's just, unless you put yourself out there, it's harder to work it out. So just a suggestion, although it's a difficult task to do, but I find that calling him often works for me.
I would agree that phone calls are pretty effective with Ken.
Actually, that's his preference, actually.
Yeah, he doesn't like to put stuff in writing because he doesn't want it to, well, because it's complicated. And what he's really trying to do is make it as easy on the jurisdictions as possible. So he's usually trying to help you and work with you and maybe not bend rules, but sort of just push up against the edges of rules every once in a while. So, but he doesn't want that. He doesn't want all that on paper, really. But I find that Ken's heart is definitely in the right place, and he is buried under paper. I mean, I don't know how many of you have actually been to Ken's office. I have on a number of occasions.
You cannot see it at all.
You cannot see any surface of his desk. And he has tons of file cabinets in his cube. It's overwhelming. And I can't even, yeah, he's a busy guy. So he's not faultless for sure, but he definitely is on your side and is the best advocate you can have. So working with him, and frequently it is the best way to get a hold of him, is to just talk it out.
It'll help you a lot if you talk to him than writing him. He helps you a lot. That's my experience with him.
Okay. Anybody else want to talk about the federal inactive obligations list some more? Okay, then we will move on.
Thank you for the advice, you guys.
Absolutely. I'm going to move real quick. Don't get car sick while I move back and forth real quick, just to be sure I'm not missing anything. Okay, we are
Next
on.
item is one Bay Grant Cycle 3 framework.
Great. I'm going to move down here.
Page 19.
There. Okay, so what is included in the TAC agenda packet are the materials that were presented to the Metropolitan Transportation Commission's Planning Advisory Committee meeting. And so the items go to the Planning Advisory Committee first, or is it the Programming and Allocations Committee? Oh, it's the Programming and Allocations Committee, sorry. There's a couple of different packs. And these same materials were approved by MTC yesterday. As far as I know, it was on the agenda. I didn't hear anything else. I haven't heard officially from MTC that these were adopted, but it was on the agenda for yesterday's meeting. So I believe that the framework was approved yesterday.
Yeah, Shauna, I listened to the meeting and they did approve it.
Thank you. Under resolution 4505, I think it was. So that being the case, we now have our framework for OBAG 3. So there are a couple of things that I'd like to draw your attention to. There's this sort of summary of what the entire program will look like, both regional and local. And it includes a total of $750 million for the whole program. And that breaks down to 375 and 375 for regional programs and local programs. There is likely more money coming to these programs via what they are calling the IIJA, or the bipartisan infrastructure law bill. But they haven't identified that yet. So that will go to the commission for future action. But it won't be included in this initial release. So there are a couple of things that are slightly different than what they do want to do is adhere to a lot of the policies that they included in OBAG 2, so that there's not a lot of switch up, so that we have the opportunity to see these programs that we put into place continue to be supported and continue to work, so that we can collect more data on how effective they are. And also, there are just a couple of things that I'd like to draw your attention to. First is one of the things that is identified as a requirement for eligibility is to have a LSRP. So 8 of our jurisdictions will have a local road safety plan by the due date, which is December 31st of 2023. But we will have 2 jurisdictions that don't have those. I believe that will mean, and I have to verify this, but my understanding is that you won't be eligible for federal funding if you don't have an LRSP. So I did want to draw that to your attention, and also that MTC is updating the complete streets policy. So there will be a new process to coordinate through MTC. We have done the checklist in the past. It will be a slightly different process. We don't know what that is yet. They're still working on development of that. And then I'm going to scroll down here and talk about the timeline. So as of yesterday, the policies and procedures framework was approved. So now we hit the point between February and April where the county transportation authorities will develop their call for projects, and that will include how they plan to evaluate their projects. Whatever evaluation criteria that we want to use will be developed and then submitted to MTC, because MTC gets to weigh in on how our evaluation criteria are working. And then once we get that approval, then we can release the call for projects for OBAG 3. Now, we've already released a call for projects as part of the 2021 funding program, SCTA 21 funding program. So we intend to create this evaluation criteria, get approval, and then we will start working on all of the 2021 funding program and trying to decide how to evaluate the applications that have come in and to apply the criteria, and then start working with the TAC to identify projects that should move forward in all of the funding categories that we had identified in the 2021 funding program. And OBAG, but we are tying all of the timing to OBAG 3. So I hope that part is clear. So there's the rest of the packet, which is in your agenda packet. And then I think the next item, sorry for scrolling, my links aren't working. And I'm sure that's user error. It's not on.
The next item is the letter for tribal.
Yes,
involvement.
excellent. Okay. Thank you. So just to make sure I address everything that's in the agenda, I also included the PowerPoint presentation that went to the PAC. So should you have any questions, it is a fairly easy to read presentation that gives you a nice summary of OBAG 3 as it stands now and the framework. So the next thing is a letter. So SCTA received a letter encouraging us to use tribal hiring preferences. We evaluated the letter and looked at the requirements that are provided in federal funding. And so what we will do, because SCTA doesn't own facilities or implement projects directly, it doesn't really apply to SCTA, but we will be including a recommendation of tribal hiring preferences for federal aid projects. And we will include that in on our website. So just wanted to make everybody aware of it. If anybody is interested, there are links to the recommended requirements on the FHWA website, and that is in your agenda packet. So the next item, I believe, Mr. Chair, correct me if I'm wrong, is the 2021 funding program. Great. Okay. So what we have, oh, Nancy, did you have a question about tribal hiring preferences?
Well, no, I didn't know. Was there going to be any discussion on the 8.2 and 8.3?
What did I, sorry, I apologize because I've, while I'm sharing screen, it's not easy to jump back and forth. So let me go back here to the.
No, I just want to know through the chair. Chair, are you going to offer any conversation or discussion for the 8.2 and 8.3 before we move on to 8.4? That's my only question.
We are always open to discussion, and I'll throw out to you, Nancy, and everyone else while we are on Zoom. If we can remember back when we used to sit in a room together, people would just shout out. And so if you have not raised your hand, or if you've raised your hand and I'm reading stuff at the same time Shauna's talking about it, so if we don't notice your hand up, just feel free to unmute and shout out. Until it gets to be a problem, it's not a problem. So go ahead, Nancy.
Well, yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about the 8.2 and I don't know if anyone else has this concern or this question, but I read through the MTC guidelines, and they do reference that they're going to be developing, which hasn't yet happened, a set of project selection guidelines. And so, that they're MTC, it's my understanding, is going to be the final decision maker in terms of the OBAG 3 programming for projects. So I wonder about what that is. We haven't seen that yet. And then they also are going to develop, I guess, a CTA and a local jurisdictions compliance checklist. And again, I don't know what that looks like, but I would imagine it would be related to their selection process. So, there was a couple of things that you mentioned, Shauna, already about, jurisdictions that don't have a local road safety plan, that they're not going to be eligible for OBAG 3 funds. And I guess I wonder about, I thought it was really a great idea that Suzanne and your team, did this very proactive call for projects earlier last summer. But I wonder if there's going to be any opportunity to pivot a little bit with the projects that were submitted, because there clearly are some program areas that are in the regional programming guidelines that I don't think we were all dialed into as we submitted our project. So
what's an example, Nancy? What's an example?
I can talk about like the Vision Zero process. I mean, those are the local road safety program. Those are two that I think are, you know, and I don't know, Suzanne, I haven't seen MTC's selection criteria, so there may be others.
Nor have we.
Right. And so then the complete street checklist is changed a bit. So I wonder, you know, when we submitted these, we knew what that checklist looked like. And we submitted those projects based on, you know, that information. So I guess my question, Suzanne, is that we didn't, as locals, we don't have all the salient information that I think some of the other jurisdictions in the Bay Area are going to have, because they haven't done their call for projects. So is that going to put us at a disadvantage? So that's even a larger question. So that's just my comment and concern, Suzanne. And, you know, I'm just asking for your consideration, right?
So I'd like to address that unless Suzanne would like to go first.
Please.
Okay. First of all, the local road safety plan, I think it's local road safety plan or equivalent. So really there's only one jurisdiction that is probably not going to be eligible for federal funds. And because the city of Sonoma has an SSARP, I think is what it's called, but that is considered an equivalent as far as I know, and will qualify them for eligibility. Everybody else will be eligible, so I don't see that as a hindrance. The Vision Zero and the changing of the complete streets, SCTA did anticipate that these were going to be in flux when we did our call for projects. We have always anticipated that when we start to evaluate, we will also, if we get to a point where we've got projects that we think are good projects, that are competitive projects, if it's missing something, we can go back and ask the jurisdictions to provide additional information or make adjustments. We haven't gotten to that point yet. Also, MTC is going to develop evaluation criteria for the regional program, but the CTAs are expected to develop the evaluation criteria for the local program. It is on us to make sure that we are complying with all of the requirements, but we are supposed to develop our own evaluation criteria that we then submit to MTC to have them bless it, essentially. But we've always anticipated that these were coming. So none of this is really a surprise. It's not ideal timing, but I feel like we are all working together. So I don't feel like this should cause anyone real consternation, because we will be working with the jurisdictions to propose the most competitive projects that we can. Does that address some of your concerns, Nancy?
Yeah, I mean, it's just challenging and kind of difficult I think and I'm just going to speak for Santa Rosa, but I don't know how the other jurisdictions feel. Just that we still have some unknown information, right? And I just, to Suzanne, I want us to be as competitive as a county at the regional level as possible. And I just hope that, not having done this call for projects before we knew all the information doesn't put us at a disadvantage. That's my only concern.
Nancy, have we ever put a jurisdiction at a disadvantage in this agency? That is obviously not our intent and not something we will do. We did a call for projects because we've had opportunities to fund projects. For example, the $25 million application we're putting together that includes City of Santa Rosa along with the other transit operators, because we wanted that information. We asked you for your best projects. I have to assume you put forward your best projects, whatever the criteria are, because you've been through these processes before. Of course, we will work with you if there's some tweak that needs to be made, but everybody put forward good projects. So I guess I just don't understand the big concern or consternation. I'm sure we will do well. I have the utmost confidence in our project sponsors.
Okay, that's all
if they did good applications from the jump.
Yeah, and I think, and you guys have been working with us throughout the process. So I just want to hear that from you, Suzanne,
Right.
and that says a lot. Well, I just, the Bay Area is such a important place. Yeah.
Come on.
So I'll add to that, at the risk of upsetting. The putting together good applications from the jump was part of the problem. 5 grant applications at the same level as an ATP or an OBAG grant application is quite an undertaking, particularly if you need to pull together actual plans, if you need community engagement. That would basically paralyze my extremely small staff to put together 5 applications that are of the quality that we put forth in the ATP for quite some time. And so I have complete faith in SCTA, and I know it's going to be fair, and I know we're all going to get roughly our same fair share portion or better. And I understand what everyone is doing and why, and I don't disagree with it in concept. But I will say that I hear what Nancy's saying, and it isn't necessarily a simple process. And it does give a little bit of concern because maybe our grant application for project A isn't exactly what is wanted for the ABAG criteria.
Shauna, do you want to address that?
I don't know that anyone needs to. I
don't think we're going to just hand in exactly what you submitted. I think we're going to get the criteria and we're going to look at it and we're going to look at all the projects and we're like, oh, cool. These projects all fit the criteria, but we should bolster the content of that application so that we make our case. We weren't asking for ATP level content in the initial call for projects, but we wanted to know what your priorities were.
That's what Nancy was asking, was that confirmation, because I don't know if that was well assumed. And yes, you're right, we should all assume that and trust that of SCTA. I don't know that it was made clear in writing or prior conversation that we were going to be able to amend these, add to these, do additional work after they were originally submitted to SCTA. I don't think that was perfectly clear at the time.
Okay, I thought it was clear in every meeting we had with everybody, but I apologize if it wasn't. So if that wasn't clear, I hope I made it clear today.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to upset or offend.
Look, it's not upsetting. I just think you guys are
Nancy a little bit in some of her comments, but we can move on.
I just don't think I think we're going to do really well. I think you guys have provided really good projects. We may need to add some content. We've already funded some of the projects. That's, it's great news, right? At least we know what you need.
As far as outreach goes, you should have been doing that already. But we are going to work with every single one of the project sponsors to try to make sure that we select projects that we think are competitive, and then are submitted with the most competitive information that is necessary to make MTC feel the same as we do.
Understood. It's hard to do that community engagement for 5 projects that 4 of which are probably not going to move forward. It is really difficult to bring the community in for a project that has a very low probability of being successful, because then it gets brought up at every meeting from there on out. And that is just a really difficult process to do that for 5 projects.
Okay. I clearly have a different understanding of what planning is supposed to be then, because I had kind of the understanding that you guys were submitting your priority projects that had already been through a public engagement process where you're getting information from the public, which is why these projects are priorities for you in the first place. But that's just me. That's my understanding. I could be way off base. Any hoozle. So Now we've talked about 8.2. Did you have anything that you wanted to talk about at 8.3, or can we move on to 8.4? I still see Nancy's hand raised, so I'm not sure. Okay, no longer raised. Then I am going to move on to 8.4. So here we are. I'm going to move back down.
SB1, local
Yep.
partnership program.
No, I think we're still talking about the 2020.
Oh, 8.4, the 2021 funding program.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as you will all recall, we released a call for projects. We looked at your applications. We asked for some additional information and some clarifications on what you had submitted. We met with each and every one of the jurisdictions to talk about your applications, and we received those updates. Everybody got 2 weeks to do their update. We received all of those updates. We have put that information into these spreadsheets. So what you will see is, and I'm just going to go through this a little bit. I apologize, it is pretty small. So let me try to make this larger so that it's easier to see here. So what you can see is that there is a page for each one of the jurisdictions. This first page is for SMART. There is a project identification number, which is unique to the project and the jurisdiction. So 2021 is a 2021 funding program. 00 is the number that we use to designate SMART. Number 1 is their top priority project, and the second one is there is a single phase of that project. So then you will see that it is in fact a link. So you can click on this link and it will take you directly to the application that was as it was submitted. So what we are asking is that by, and I think it's reasonable for a couple of weeks. So if you guys could get this back to me by the 11th of February, I would like to know if we have correctly represented your projects. So please do go through, review what we have put in here, review how it is presented here. Let me just go over how the funding looks a little bit. So you'll see project name and project location. That's pretty straightforward. Not everybody included project limits. So sometimes I had to guess or try to extrapolate. So please make sure that I have accurately done that if it wasn't included in the project limits description. Then you'll see a description of work. That should be pretty much verbatim from your application. And then you'll see this should look sort of familiar. This is adapted from a spreadsheet that we used to use from MTC. So you'll see that each developmental phase has a line item, and then your grant request is shown here. If the project has already received funding, and I believe there are only 4 projects that have received funding so far, maybe 3, you will see it in these blue columns that will show that we have, for example, Santa Rosa's pedestrian overcrossing received STIP funding. So there would be a STIP amount shown here for that project. The white columns represent what each of your applications showed as your matching funds. If I have misrepresented those, please let me know. You've got other regional funding, you've got state funding or federal funds, or if they were local funds. And sometimes math was required in order to make that happen per developmental phase. And then over here, this final blue column should show your total programmed amount. That would include the money that you have already committed, plus anything that's been programmed in these blue columns already. And then this coral colored column shows what your request is. And it should show as 0 if we've funded the project. But if we haven't funded the project, which is the case for most of these projects, then there will be an amount in this column. Then there are these compliance columns. Right now, there are only 3 of them. There's the whether or not the project is in a PDA, it is a PDA supportive, or it is not in a PDA. If you identified which project it correlates to in the CTP, it's listed here. And then because we haven't done it yet, most of these projects do not have a complete streets checklist submitted. But as I said, if you had received funding early, say for the STIP or CRISA projects, then there will be a project or checklist submitted in this column. As we go forward, these columns will be identified because we know that there are other things like an LRSP that make you eligible. We will make sure that those things are represented here. And then these final sort of beige columns over here show what you represented as your investment by mode. So on your applications, you said this project is 90% transit and 10% bike ped, or, you know, SMART did on this particular project, and that totals that. And then if there were comments, generally, if I had questions or if there was something that maybe didn't match, then I've put a comment here, or sometimes it's just for my own information. SMART doesn't have a lot of Measure M, so it was worth it to me to know which of their projects submitted they intended to use Measure M as their match. So that's why that's in that comments column. It says CMA notes to MTC, but it's really just CMA notes, and it's really CTA notes. Some of this stuff didn't get updated. It was just a matter of our working workbook, if you will. So as I mentioned, there is a plan or there is a worksheet for each of the jurisdictions. Please go through and make sure that what we have identified is actually the case, that everything is accurate, and get back to us with any information that is not accurate.
And you said that deadline was February 11th?
Yes. And then again, as we said, we would, you know, right now, I'm not looking for major adjustments, but if there's a comment that says that I have questions or there was something that was unclear, it behooves you to clarify that for me so that we can then get to a point where we can evaluate and I don't have any questions in my mind. So do check for those things. Then, as we mentioned, once we get past the evaluation part and we are ready to start looking towards submitting to MTC, we will be working with the jurisdictions to make sure that anything that we think might be lacking in an application that could bolster it and make it more competitive once we submit it to MTC, we will be reaching out to the jurisdictions for that. But I am not looking for changes to your applications at this point unless there is confusion or some question about something. So, or if I have misrepresented something, if it's not accurate what is in this, then please do let me know that, because we are going to take this to the board as well and to the CAC. So with that, oh, let's not make it 200% anymore because now I can't see it. All right, go back up here. Apologize for jumping back and forth.
Shauna, let me ask a quick question for you. The SCTA project coding, you went through it at the beginning of this. Do you describe that somewhere in the memo?
I do not. I did not include the summary page, but it is essentially 2021, which is the year that the project was submitted to SCTA. And then there is a 2-digit code that represents the jurisdiction. And each jurisdiction gets a code, a unique code. And then the next number is the priority that the jurisdiction identified to us. And then the final number is the phase that that project represents. So for a number of projects, they submitted a single project that has 3 or 4 phases. The Mirabel corridor, for instance, that has 5 phases.
Right.
So there would be a a line item, if you will, for each one of those phases, and each one would have a number.
Thank you.
So are there any questions about what I need or where we are in the 2021 funding program at this point? And Steve, did I cover all the stuff that you wanted to talk about when we got to the discussion about OBAG and requirements and that sort of thing and funding?
Yeah, Shauna, thanks. I guess this still seems a bit, just the criteria for project selection and how one project's weighed against another. And I realize it's still forming, but I guess that's our primary concern, just so that we know how MTC is going to evaluate each project on its merits relative to another project in another jurisdiction or county, because that's who we're, duking it out with for the little bit of money that's coming out. So thanks.
Okay, so I think that moves us on to item 8.5, Mr. Chair, which is I'm going to turn over to David Ripperda.
Yep.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is an item that is refreshing an item that went to this committee previously in 2019. Back then, this committee and the board approved LPP funding for two projects, one for Sonoma County Transit and the other for the City Petaluma's McDowell Boulevard project. We worked with Sonoma County Transit to submit their project to CDC to get that project programmed. However, due to COVID-19 and other staff demands, the county withdrew that project. The City of Petaluma has been working on the environmental design of the McDowell project. However, it has had a cost increase and a decrease in scope, and the city was not able to submit the allocation paperwork to CDC last fiscal year. So at this time, we're recommending rescinding the funding from both projects. For the City of Petaluma's McDowell Boulevard project, that project, as mentioned in the staff report, will be considered as part of our 2021 funding program. We are cognizant that is the city's highest priority, and we'll be definitely keeping that in mind going forward. However, we do have $551,000 of LPP funding that will lapse unless we program a new project this fiscal year and submit to CDC in May at the latest. So we looked at the list of projects that were submitted for the 2021 funding program, and we determined the best fit for the funding was the City of Santa Rosa City Buses project to replace their 2011 bus fleet. That application is for 7 buses. However, with the funding amount available, 1 bus could be procured ahead of time. The other 6 can be considered as part of the 2021 funding program. So at this time, staff is recommending that you recommend to the board that they rescind the approximately $1.1 million of LPP funding from the 2 previous projects, and that they recommend programming the $551,000 to the city bus project. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. We also have Rachel from City Bus here as well.
Ken?
Yeah, thank you very much, David. I need to be clear. So is there anything that we can do to secure any part of that funding? Because we're going through the design process now and trying to look at bond measures and other monies, transportation impact fees that would be available. So we're kind of scratching everywhere to get the funds. Are those monies gone?
So essentially what's going to happen is if the committee moves forward with the staff recommendation, the $551,000 will be deprogrammed from your project. However, it will still be in the pool for the 2021 fund program. So you may be able to receive that funding back with additional LPP funds or perhaps OBAG funds or some other funding source. So we'll definitely try to keep your project whole, and we'll be working with you to try to get you a fully funded project. But since we can't fully fund the project with the money we have at hand right now, that's in danger of lapsing. That's why we're recommending rescinding the funding from your project.
Okay, understood. Yeah, we had a community meeting last night, and there's a lot of interest in making sure this moves forward. So we're very interested in working with you to make that happen. Thank you.
Any other questions? So David, I assume this would be a formal vote?
Correct. We are looking for a motion and second.
Anyone care to make that motion? So I have never seen the case where someone's not making a motion.
Santa Rosa, make a motion.
I was gonna say, I was hoping not to have to move on our item because it seems a little self-interested, but I will move the staff recommendation and see if we can get a second.
Thank you, Rachel, for the motion. The fact that no one made the motion, I'm wondering if anyone would like to discuss. Seeing no discussion, I'm assuming people are just tired.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Edie. Yeah, thanks, Edie. I felt the same way as Rachel. I know it's our project, but I felt a little awkward doing that. So
understood. And I'm not sure as chair, I guess I could probably make a motion as well, but I usually don't. But it all makes sense to me. So we have a motion, we have a second. Any objections? Seeing none, passes unanimously. And Ken, you still have your hand up in case you want to speak.
Thank you.
I guess that is, oh, Ken?
No, thank you. We're good.
Sorry about that. You need anything else, David, on that item, or are we ready to move on?
We're ready. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
On to the ATP Bay Area best practices and application timeline.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is just an informational item included in the agenda packet. It came out from MTC. I wanted to include it in your information because the ATP cycle is coming up and the next ATP cycle is coming up, and we want to make sure that everybody has the best information moving forward. And I also wanted to offer myself up. I didn't mention it last year, but I was an ATP evaluator for the state program. I had to evaluate 10 different projects and score them. So I'm pretty familiar with the rubrics and how they are applied. So if anyone would like to work with me as they develop an application process, I'd be happy to lend my services.
And Shauna's invitation also extends to myself. I used to run the regional portion of the active transportation program at my previous position at the San Joaquin Council Government. So very familiar with the program. And if anyone needs any help or advice, please feel free to reach out to either one of us.
Thank you both. Healdsburg might take you up on that. As you all know, we missed that last round by a single point, and we have been talking with both Adam at MTC, and we're working with the CTC, trying to get a couple more points. So it's a pretty refined application already, but I may ask for additional review because we don't want to miss a single point this round. Any other comments on that item? Seeing none, moving on to item 9. I see we lost our speaker for the TDA3 TFCA. We'll just see if anyone has any questions or comments regarding what's in the packet.
I would just like to offer, Mr. Chair, that item 9 is simply the quarterly reports. These are brought to you on a quarterly basis. You should be familiar with these, so review them and make sure they're accurate. And item 10 is the preliminary call for projects. You will still get this information at another time.
Thank you for that, Shauna. So it's in your packet. If there are questions, you can ask now or reach out to Dana in the future. Okay, onward to item 11, the SCTA RCPA board meeting on February 14th.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we try to do each month, we try to bring you the draft agenda so that you have some idea of what we will be taking to your directors. So if you have any questions about what is shown, then please do let us know. I would, Drew, if you could go up so that we can see the consent calendar. Thank you. Okay, the rest of the top of the agenda is just about COVID protocols and that sort of thing. So the consent calendar starts on item 3. You can see that there are a number of concurrent items, and then the SCTA items include the Measure M annual report, which will be going to the Citizens Advisory Committee this Monday and then going to the board on February 14th. I don't anticipate any difficulty with that. As you know, you all contribute to the annual report by submitting your annual reporting letters, and then we use that to consolidate and put together the Measure M annual report. So this is just sort of for you to know that that's coming. And then we also we will be taking the planning initiation or project initiation documents work plan to the board for approval so that we can submit that to Caltrans. You may recall that we talked about the PID documents in December. I did receive an update from the city of Rohnert Park. We will be including one of their projects, the pedestrian overcrossing, on the PID work plan as well. But everything else remains as you saw it in December. And then you can see that the tool design for Vision Zero action plan. There's just the agreement with tool will be going to them, and the local partnership program funding that David talked about earlier is also going to them on consent calendar. And then there are, if you could scroll down a little bit to the regular items, Drew, thank you. We will be having election of officers. We do that on an annual basis. It kind of depends on whether or not a director is re-upped or if there is an election and there are new council members that end up being on our board. So I think we might have one new director coming in this year. And let's see, what else do we have? The action plan report is going, and the proposed shop list is going. And then there should be, I think I misspoke earlier, there is also a contract amendment for Parsons, who is the consultant on board to provide the design for 116, 121 intersection improvements. That contract is having a proposed amendment. So that was also on the consent calendar. And I saw the Measure M and conflated that contract amendment with the Measure M annual report. The rest of the items are RCPA items. I'll be happy to address any of them if anybody has questions. But other than that, I think that summarizes that item, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I, for one, appreciate being able to see this and going through some of these items. That it is an assistance to me. Hopefully others get something out of it as well. Any comments? Seeing none, open it up to the group. Other business, comments, announcements? Tony.
I was just wondering if you've heard when the PTAP 23 is going to be coming out for a call. I thought it was coming out in December.
Calls are usually in October, somewhere between October and December, and then they are awarded later. So I would contact, and Sweetan is now the contact for PTAP since Christina Hohorst is no longer at MTC, or she's on sabbatical or something. She's not there anymore handling it. So Sweetan is the one that's handling it. So I would contact him directly.
Okay.
Anyone else? With that, I think we are adjourned at 3:15. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Larry.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks very
everybody.
much.
Thank you, everybody.